Thank you.
Bravo, Jay Julio. Well, welcome. Let's welcome Jay to my studio and having a conversation today. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. And how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So I am first going to introduce you to our audience. I'm going to read a short version of Jay's bio. Jay is a first generation Filipino-American violist, and he's from New York and prize winner in national competitions held by the National Federation of Music Clubs, the Music Teachers National Association, and the YoungArts Foundation, a 2019 recipient of the Juilliard Career Grant, and 2020 recipient of a Fast Pitch Award from the Music Academy of the West for their organization Sound Off Music for Bail that have been profiled and featured on Interlochen Public Radio, WKCR, and SiriusXM. Jay has spent recent summers at Aspen Music Festival as a New Horizon Fellow, the Yellow Barn Young Artists Program, and Orpheus Mannes Institute. This 2020 summer, they received invitations to the Pacific Music Festival, the Spoleto Music Festival, and the Music Academy of the West. They are honored to serve as one of 4 2020 to 2023 Los Angeles Orchestra Fellows, performing with the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra, mentoring member of the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, and studying at the University of South California as a graduate certificate student. Oh my goodness, you are only 23 years old. You've accomplished so much, Jay. Bravo.
Thank you.
Bravo.
No, that doesn't feel like it all the time. Yeah.
So, Jay, how are you these days?
I'm doing as well as one can be expected to be. Keeping pretty busy, I will say. Definitely doing a lot of work, musical work, of course, a lot of recording, a lot of teaching, which I do deeply, deeply love, and a decent amount of organizing. And of course, we're in New York, so we are very privileged to, have access to so many resources to get us out of our houses and into the streets for actions, for very important actions, of course, including the one happening today in many cities after the announcement of the charges against Breonna Taylor. I'm very excited to be there tonight. I guess excited, maybe not the right word. I'm ready to be out there with people tonight. And,
so tell me about tonight. What is the event? Tell me, because I know the officers are not getting convicted or any serious conviction. And tell me what's going on today.
So organizers in New York and many other cities have been planning the night of charges or lack thereof being announced by the Kentucky AG, that is the top prosecutor, the Attorney General. They've been planning a rally in major cities. So there are actually 2 happening in New York. There's one at Times Square and there's one at the Barclays Center at 7 p.m. And for security reasons, I would say exact details. Of course, we never know who was watching, but I'm very hopeful that people will stand for justice, for what's right, because only the officer that shot bullet, or one of the officers that shot bullets, was charged for anything, and that was for, I believe, for willful endangerment or something to that effect. Which basically means that they are being tried for having shot bullets into adjacent apartments, or shooting bullets that ended up in the walls of adjacent apartments, and not for the actual bullets which struck Ms. Taylor. And of course, knowing that there was a $12 million settlement paid out to the family of Breonna Taylor, we can see that still in this country, there appears to be an equivocation of Black people's lives with monetary damages. You know,
Right.
in a sense, we are paying, you know, for the taking of Black lives, which is, you know, indefensible, I believe, in this country. So I'm really glad that people are going to stand up against that.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. I know you're Filipino-born violist and musician, and tell us a little bit about how your upbringing was and what made you became such an young activist or be aware of, you know, all these social justice around you.
So I was born in New York to two Filipino-American immigrants, both farmers, both parts of families that were very large. I think both of my parents had more than 10 siblings each. And so when they decided to try to make their fortune in the United States, they settled in New York in a town called Uniondale. Eventually, by the time that I was walking around and knew what a town was, we went from apartment to apartment, of as many other immigrant families do. And for a period of time, we did have a house, which I remember. Some of my most joyful memories of childhood are from that time. And I grew up in a town that was maybe not the richest in terms of per capita income. There was a lot of other immigrant families, and we would call them today illegal families. A lot of households that would have, you know, 7 or 8 people packed into a house, and you know, multi-generational families. But they were very rich in culture and joy. It was a very highly immigrant neighborhood. A lot of people coming from the Dominican Republic, from Puerto Rico, which of course is part of the U.S., from Guatemala, from El Salvador, from Haiti and Jamaica, as well as people coming from Jamaica, Queens, other parts of Queens, Brooklyn and the Bronx. It was a very culturally rich area to grow up in, and I'm very grateful that I grew up where I grew up. I wasn't playing music at that point, actually. And I wouldn't start violin until I was 11, until I was in 6th grade, and I'd be learning in orchestra class and also online on YouTube. So I have the internet to thank for part of my upbringing, certainly in that regard. Now, I did move with my family briefly to a town on the outskirts of Memphis. When I was younger, it was a bit of a family dispute, and we ended up losing our house in that. And so when we moved there, again, in search of a better life, we ended up in a town that was majority white. And it was the first time that I experienced what I now know as racism. But back then was, you know, things such as having questions asked of me if I ate dogs or cats. Questions about, you know, of course, my eyes and the skin color that I had as a brown-skinned Asian person, of course, you know, which we certainly back then did not see many portrayals of. Most depictions of Asian people, of course, and certainly in the South, being, you know, the person that you collect your Chinese takeout from, or at the very most seeing anime on TV. And racism actually manifested itself in a couple of other ways in my upbringing, and that was learning the Civil War, which I'd, you know, learned in even in elementary school as the Civil War in New York, and in the reading that I did, learning about it as the war between the states and about states' rights, and seeing depictions of enslaved people reduced to workers. Thinking a lot about the economic ramifications of abolition of slavery at that time, rather than the human cost and toll. And so I did spend a lot of time there. We ended up, me and my mother and my brother went back up to the north the year afterwards, but it really showed me for a year the sort of pain of that one goes through oftentimes in this country. And not to say that New York, of course, is free of any of that. We need only see further towns on Long Island or even in upstate New York or even in the city to see that, of course, there's still a lot of disagreement on the full validity of many people of color as people in this country. We're still seeing, of course, ICE threaten to raid New York, and we have seen ICE, in the past stationed at Jackson Heights, in Flushing, Queens, and other immigrant neighborhoods, which is, of course, something very, very debatable. At least knowing what ICE does in this country, as I'm sure many people have already seen the headlines with the whistleblower letting us know that there are forced sterilizations still happening. Sorry, we're going actually a little bit far, but
so how did you become more like an activist? I was asking, like, is because you've seen a lot of problems around you, lots of prejudices or what?
Yes, and I don't think it's necessarily that we see them and then we're immediately, immediately become an activist, because people, of course, in this country see so many things, and it's I'm not to say that any one event will necessarily make anybody an activist, but just knowing that you have the power to do something really, really changed me. The education that I got in public schools and actually in private schools, as I did do 2 years at boarding school, really made me feel that I had a voice and that I had a unique voice and one that could be used to help others. Now, that's not to say that I am necessarily unique. I think everybody is unique in the ways that they can become an activist. And it's really as simple as educating yourself, because when you educate yourself, you can educate others.
Yes. So let's talk about your music, and then we'll get back to your the project currently. So you started to play the violin when you were 11, and then what is the path for you to get into Juilliard, New England Conservatory, all these music festivals? Tell us a little bit about your musical journey, please.
Of course. So, as mentioned before, I started in 6th grade in an orchestra class. I think they sort of assumed that I would be good at the violin simply because of how I looked, which maybe is another story to tell. But I was not very good at all. I was horrible, actually, that first year. But I'd never been that bad at anything before, because I grew up and I was a reasonably smart student. I'd skipped 2nd grade. And, it was just assumed that I would be good at anything. And having that first moment of struggle really galvanized me. I was like, I can't give this up. Like, I've never been bad at something, so bad at something. And I started learning off YouTube a lot. I would watch prodigies for hours on YouTube and try and mimic what they would do. And I started zooming through pieces. I was like self-teaching myself things. And every week I would come into the orchestra teacher's office and be like, hey, look at what I can do. I would taught myself vibrato. It would be horrible. And that orchestra teacher, which I dearly love, she would say, that's not how you do that. Let me show you how to do it. And so through very quick one-off lessons like that, I eventually caught the eye of a teacher who taught at Mannes Preparatory Division at Mannes College New School here in New York, because she had come into my high school with the Long Island Symphony, which is now unfortunately defunct. But back when they existed, they had a outreach program for so-called underserved schools, and they came to my high school, and she took a liking to my playing. She was like, if you switch over to viola, I will work with you. And so I was 14 and started working with her there as a violist. So I've never had a true violin teacher. That'll change soon. So I studied there for a year. I auditioned at Interlochen Arts Academy and went there for the next 2 years. So I finished out my high school. Then I was 16 when I started at the Manhattan School of Music, studying with Karen Richer. And then proceeded on to Juilliard for my master's. I'm studying with Heidi Castleman, Misha Amory. After 2 years there, I am now in my current position as a fellow with the LA Chamber Orchestra and the Inner City Youth Orchestra Los Angeles and the University of Southern California with the Los Angeles Orchestra Fellowship. And I'm very grateful because a lot of things did come together for me. If I had been missing one of these key things, I would be, of course, in a very different place. This opportunity doesn't happen to a lot of people. So I'm so, of course, grateful. And at the same time, I wish that there was this kind of opportunity for everybody.
Yeah. You're a quick learner, because a lot of people have to go through, study the string instruments, especially when they're like 5 or 6, right? And then you started late, and then now you're in this level of playing and musicianship. It's very admirable, and you're very fortunate also to study with all these great musicians, isn't it?
What a blessing. It's been amazing. I can't even
I
think about it too much. I can't believe it even.
Yeah.
I will say it does, of course, come from a lot of love, but it does come from a lot of trust being placed into me by individual people that I was worth teaching. And I did have to, I did certainly feel like I had to prove myself constantly. And of course, I still battle with that, having to feel a little bit like I have to prove myself to anybody that I meet, that I'm worthy of being there. And I wish I didn't have that. Because it is.
Could we hear one of the excerpts we want to show to our audience? Which one should we start first?
How about the Clark? Does that sound? Yeah, maybe a few minutes of that.
I'll show the Clark. Okay, it's on my end. We're gonna screen share. Hold on 1 second. Rebecca Clark. Rebecca Clark is a English actually violist and composer, right? This sonata is very famous. You want to tell a little bit about what are we going to listen the first movement?
Certainly. So Rebecca Clark, as Ms. Juhl mentioned, is a English composer. She actually did move to the States, I believe, up until the end of her life. And it's very unfortunate that we have so few pieces from her. I mean, there's actually a reasonable wealth of riches from her compositional portfolio, but she, like many other women composers before, even now, I guess, she was sort of forced to decide between having a compositional career and having a career taking care of her family. And I believe her husband did not really encourage her to keep writing music. So actually, she lived quite a long time after the composition of the sonata, which was 1919, written actually for a composition contest that would eventually award the Ernest Bloch 1919 prize, the first prize. But this was actually preferred by the judges. It was just Miss Coolidge, who had sponsored the prize, didn't want to show favoritism by giving the prize to Clark, who was one of her good friends, I believe.
I see. Yes. Okay, here we go. So let's make it bigger. We're going to play. Beautiful. Very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's from about a year ago.
Yeah. What is this event?
So that was simply a recording that me and the pianist Leon had made together. We ended up sending that to a couple of festivals. Well, I sent that to a couple of festivals and used that for my pre-screens this year.
Yeah.
So nothing particularly fancy with that, but it's a joy to play that music.
Yeah, I love it. I love this music. Yeah, we have some audiences join us. Ching Juhl says nice. You have a cello band says beautiful. Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. And so now let's talk about. Do you remember how we met?
Certainly. It was a few months ago, I believe, and we'd put together a string quartet for one of Sound Off Music for Bale's first outdoor performances. It was a quartet that I put together to combine playing beautiful classical music. I believe it was a Haydn quartet and a Schubert quartet. And as we drew an audience, we were hoping to be able to talk a little bit about Sound Off and talk a little bit about what we do as an organization. Sean, of course, was playing viola. I was playing violin, which is not my favorite instrument to play at this point, but I end up doing a lot of it, and I'm very hireable on violin, evidently.
Hireable, I like that.
So anyway, no.
Yeah, that was a really nice event. I went because Sean told me. Sean is my son, and so how do you know Sean? Because you're older than Sean.
Yes, so we went to school together, I believe, for the last 2 years. I think he started at the same time that I started. But we had also done Music Academy of the West online program together, Marley. And we bonded over that. There was, of course, a viola group chat. And we all stayed in contact, especially those of us who were New York-based. Since at the same time that Marley was running, there was, of course, a very, very large, a great virtual uprising against a lot of sources of oppression, against racism, and a lot of support for Black Lives Matter, of course, in the wake of Jacob Blake.
Yeah.
And
I have to thank you. You told Sean to go to Black Matters. No, the visual, I think. Yeah, is that the visual? Yes. The Elijah. And then Sean told me, and I said, "Oh, I'm going too." So I went there with Sean, and I made a live streaming, and got very viral on my YouTube channel. By the way, people, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Juhl Media, please. And then I made a film. Actually, I made a film about that event, of the parade, the what do you call it? Protest also. So anyway, yeah, thank you for influence Sean, and I'm glad Sean is interested in these kind of things. I mean, he's not probably as active as you are, but at least he is, he is coming along with us and doing all these. And Sean went to another event on Saturday with me. It's called Basic Income Parade. Basic income is it's a sum of money, supposed to giving to citizens of particular country with no condition. So there's actually basic income movement out there, and then it's also a platform of Andrew Yan, which I supported strongly for the last year. I made like 123 short films and videos about that cause. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of the editing a feature documentary film.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
No, certainly basic income is not, universal basic income is not a foreign idea. In the sense that it's never been tried before. It's been tried several times in many cities across the globe, actually, with quite a degree of success. I think what they've found is people, despite what other people, in the ether might believe, the money that gets used from universal basic income is used towards very important needs: rent, food, all kinds of school-related activities. It's very, 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 very important, I think, for the people to understand that it is, it's a very important form of social welfare that I think is very underexplored. We have, we haven't really tried that in this country on a large scale. There have been small city projects.
Yeah. In maybe Alaska, they use oil money to distribute money to citizens.
And I believe Hawaii too, if I'm not wrong. I think a lot of the focus on that is simply to encourage people to move to those states, because those states are, it's expensive to live there because they're importing a lot of things. But we do see that these are big benefits, and certainly with the current state of the U.S. budget, I think it can be agreed that there are better ways to move our resources around.
Right. So tell us a little bit about United States, how screwed up of the bail system, and you are in this movement called Sound Off, which you created.
Thank you. So in a nutshell, cash bail is a system used in a few countries around the world, including the U.S., where one, when arrested, can either go free after the arrest to be expected to come later into court and no strings attached, or they can be held on bail, which means that if they can't come up with a certain sum of money, then they won't be let go. They'll have to stay in jail for what could be months or years until their trial, or they could just be held without bail. And that is something that's generally reserved for crimes where it's expected that the person might run away, or that the person is a immediate danger to the people around them. Now, this in-between option, the option of paying to go free, means that if you can't come up with this amount of money, which ranges from $500 to $5,000 to $500,000, you can't go free for what could be months or years. And that means that you're in jail and imprisoned and subject to the prison system without ever seeing a day in court. Eventually, many of these people will be judged innocent, but we also do find that because when, of course, you're in jail, you can't really access legal resources. You have to have people be, your in-betweens. We see that there's a large amount of cases that if you can't pay bail, like basically you get found guilty because you can't find good legal aid when you are in a cell. And that, as much as anything, I think should be obvious. Particularly when we think about the kind of people who cannot afford to pay bail. They tend to be very much people who are many degrees poorer than the general population. I believe reading a study from the Bail Project and from Prison Policy that the average income for a white man that can't afford bail is around $12,000, $13,000. And if average bail amounts in this country for a felony are $10,000, we're talking about almost an entire year's income. For a Black woman, that number actually is even lower, about $9,000. These are people who already are struggling under the current economy. And if they are being sent, or if they're accused of a felony, which in some states is protesting, in many states is possession of a certain amount of marijuana, or even if it's something considered a violent crime, such as burglary, if they are supposed to be burgling a place, then they can be locked in jail for months and years. And in fact, this did happen in New York. Khalif Browder, and this is such a really tragic case, was held in solitary for 2 years, held in jail for 3 years while waiting for a trial. Eventually, his case was dismissed by the Bronx DA, district attorney. But the damage was already done because we know that jails are a punishment. They're not a rehabilitation. And we know that. That's why we send people to jails. It's because these are so-called bad people. But the system is indiscriminate in the way that it treats people. Certainly, there's a lot of completely, we would say, innocent people. There's a lot of people who are, of course, forced into criminal activity because of how it is in their economies, in their personal economies. There's some people that do real crimes, and and we understand that there is a kind of way to mete out justice. But there is something I think incredibly wrong in this country when a innocent teenager at the time can be held for 3 years with basically no recompense, and be so traumatized by the jail system that Khalif would eventually end his life in, I believe, 2013. And this is not a unique story. This is just a famous story.
Yeah. So what is the sound of, in specifically, what you do to diminish or to what do you do to voice out this problem?
So we have a whole series of different ways that we approach this. The first thing, and I think one of the most important things, is actually the educational part of it. So I'm sure for people listening that this was new information to at least some degree. This is sort of a mini version, it's a microcosm of a talk that we would give at a flagship Sound Off concert presentation. So what we are in the process of is developing a system of presentations where we combine classical music performances by wonderful musicians with talks about the many ills in our current prison industrial complex. This would be a 30-minute or so string quartet, perhaps, mixed in with somebody talking about the prison industrial complex, maybe from the view of being inside of it, maybe a formerly incarcerated individual, maybe an activist, or maybe a family member of all of the above. They would give a talk and have people ruminate on that as they listen to classical music, which I think is particularly healing, since classical music, of course, we're rather unique in the sense that audience expectations are that you sit in silence and you listen. And so I'm hoping to pair that listening of beautiful music with listening to people's testimonies. Now, after the music ends, after maybe another 30 minutes of music after the talk, there's a Q&A with both musicians and with speakers from the audience. And the point of this is both to educate audiences about the realities of the system, as well as musicians, many musicians who have a deep desire to promote justice but don't know how to. This gives them an outlet, but it also brings together communities, because one of my great heroes, Dr. Angela Davis, often speaks about the invisibility of incarceration, the fact that it's so stigmatized that we can't talk about it. Many people, especially in communities of color, know somebody who's been incarcerated or somebody who's been targeted by ICE, but we can't talk about it because it's something shameful, because we associate criminalization with being a bad person, when oftentimes it's desperation rather than demonization that is the issue. And so we're hoping to create communities that people can talk freely about these subjects in, because that's one of the most important things, of course, is providing a community of support, not only for people directly affected by it by having family members in it, but by creating welcoming communities that allow the rehabilitation of formerly incarcerated people. One of the biggest issues, of course, is that the current prison system has a recidivism rate. That means people returning to prison of over 50%, maybe hovering around 60 or 70% in different states. This means, of course, that the system is not working. This doesn't mean that people are broken, because of course, no human is born as a broken person. And I think that's something that that deeply, I truly believe in. If I believe that everybody should be given equal opportunity when it comes to classical music, I also believe that everyone should be given an equal opportunity when it comes to rehabilitating themselves. And if we don't allow that, then, of course, we have many issues. Now, I talked a lot about the educational aspect, but I haven't touched on many of the legal aspects of it. So we, of course, encourage voting, but more than we encourage presidential voting, which, of course, has many affects based on which state you're in. For example, in New York, it's very hard for us to make much of a difference. We focus, particularly in blue states, on the funneling of money to more local causes, such as bail funds that do the work of bailing people out of jails and prisons and connecting them to resources where they can find justice in their cases. We also try to educate people on local races. For example, the soon to happen races for council people in New York City. And I was very contentious, actually, the fact that the $1 billion that were that were divested from policing in New York City were moved by council people to putting campus safety officers in schools, essentially policing the schools by $600 million. Now, we won't see a cent of that going to policing in our schools because, of course, we will not see the schools open in a large way. I think knowing that cases seem to be rising in New York, even as we open our schools, I do personally believe that we will see school closings very soon. That of course is we'll see if I guess wrong on that. But we actually have a lot of power to change the way that we have policed our communities by moving money through city budgets away from damaging. I think we can agree that over policing is damaging, and the way that we're policing now is damaging. Instead of sending money towards the police, we have alternatives. We can provide more for social welfare. We can have of course, better health care. We can have better mental health care. We can have better ways of giving people food so that we are not forced to steal. We can offer people more gainful ways of employment rather than what we have essentially created, which is a black market within the market of New York City's employment, because oftentimes people find it very difficult to find employment, especially if you were, of course, a former felon. The question of have you been convicted of a felony still appears on many job applications, even in states that it should be banned in. And I think a lot of the most deep work, the work that I'm most proud of, is the theoretical work that we do. So we have an educational series where we talk in small groups about the blueprints for alternative ways of living. We have such leaders as Ruth Wilson Gilmore and Angela Davis still alive with us and still writing, very active today. And so we in small groups at Sound Off, we put people together, again, creating a community of people that read together these seminal works, including Angela Davis's Our Prisons Obsolete, as well as various resources published by their collective Critical Resistance. We read these together and try and envision with the imagination that so many of us as artists have, and also as amateur artists have. I think it's so important that we, just as we don't pigeonhole people into being criminals, we don't pigeonhole ourselves into being just one thing.
Right. Well said. Should we listen to more of your clips?
Sure thing. Do you want me to share something, or do you want to share something?
You share first.
Sure thing. So while I have been, of course, trapped at home like many others, I have been so lucky as to have a church job. I worship and play at the Broadway Presbyterian Church, a church that I'm so proud of, because we do a lot of the social care things that I think really characterize tenets of my faith and also tenets of my personal beliefs. We have a soup kitchen. We have a homeless shelter. And I don't want to shout out our pastor, but I'm very proud of the theology that is talked about. And we have also had many discussions on the ways that Black American music, especially in the church world, has continued to influence us and guide us through difficult periods in our lives. I will not be sharing any of that, but I will be sharing a clip taken in that church, recorded with a pianist, Antonio Triols. This is Charles Lloyd Jr.'s Compensation. He's a really, really wonderful, composer who I think has not received as much love as he deserves. So please tell me if you can see this. Is it working?
Not yet. You have to click share screen.
Oh, I just thought I had done that. Perhaps I can't do it. Huh, how strange.
You can give me the link, I could do it.
Sure thing. So sorry for the delay on this.
Okay. You can send me a link in the private chat if you want.
Sure thing. So here it is. Apologies. I've become very well versed on Zoom, but other applications, there's a learning curve for me. I'm very, very excited to continue to be educated through this app.
StreamYard, yeah. StreamYard. So I just got a link from you, and then I'm going to put into my Google, and then I'm gonna click paste. Then I'm gonna. Oh, okay, Charles. Yeah, hold on one second. Then I go back to here, and then I go to share, share, and go to Google.com, and then Charles with the share audio. Here we go. Okay, I heard this earlier. Very nice.
It's a bit of a short song, so
Nice.
there's quite a lot of wind up for that.
Mhm.
But I actually got that from a book that I'm very happy to shout out, if that's okay. I picked this up, this anthology of art songs by Black American composers earlier in the pandemic, and I think one of the best things that we can do as artists in this time, of course, is to uplift the work of Black composers and Black artists who have already contributed so much to the field. There have already been people who have done the work of searching out and compiling music so that we don't have to. I really salute those musicologists and other people who really do very important work. One of the big barriers, of course, is that so much of the music that we are trying to play is difficult to find because publishers have neglected these pieces.
Right.
And so any work that we can do to uplift them, I think, is in its own way a form of resistance.
That was nicely filmed. You have more than they have 2 cameras at least.
Yeah, there's a system there. We've got quite a few cameras.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So that's well done. Very well done. Shall we play a little bit of a Schumann?
Sure thing.
Okay.
Oh, so this came from a recital that I played at Juilliard.
Oh yeah. Okay. I have it here. I have it here, and then share. Let me go to the beginning. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
very
you.
nice. I love
And you can find all of those on my YouTube channel if you would like to hear
Yeah.
them in slightly better quality.
Yeah, very nice. So, so Jay, you have a website. Tell me a little bit about your website.
Oh, it's a collection. I use it basically as a portfolio.
Oh, okay.
And so you can see collaborations with other artists. I
Shall we show?
certainly am not, I don't think of myself as even
Shall we show?
primarily. Oh, yeah, sure. You can look at it. Oh, my. Oh, geez.
That's your website.
Yes. So as you can see, most of what I have posted on it actually is not classical work. I like to think of myself both as a multi-instrumentalist and also as a multi-genre artist. I do quite a lot of writing work as well. And I am, I do hope that in the future we can sort of reimagine the ways that we teach music in the conservatory. And this, of course, is connected to my earlier points about playing Black composers and, of course, other composers of color, and also respecting musics that come from different lineages, particularly as we more and more understand string instruments actually as not simply a Western creation, but from their roots, of course, in many instruments in Africa, in many instruments in the Middle East, and also the contributions of so-called alternative styles to what we do in classical music today. And so many pieces, of course, are fiddling this or fiddling that, and there's a certain Americana that, of course, has come up in a lot of contemporary classical music of American composers in the past couple of years. I'm really happy about that. I think it's really wonderful that so many other genres are being infused into classical music, and I'm hopeful that we can continue this. So if there are any people who are in other genres and are interested in trying to figure out how they can introduce strings into it, I'm happy to consult, of course.
So what is your current project or your immediate, I know you're going to be going to Los Angeles, this program. Tell us a little bit about that.
The Los Angeles Orchestra Fellowship is a combination of 3 different programs with 3 Los Angeles-based institutions. It's the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra's Fellowship Program. So we'll be playing alongside them, hopefully, when everything opens up. We'll see whenever that happens. It's a graduate certificate program with the University of Southern California, Thornton School of Music. So we're taking lessons there. We are doing orchestra there, and we're doing chamber music there. And it's also a mentorship program with the Inner City Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles, which is the largest majority African-American orchestra in the country. That is a surprising honor for them, considering that this is primarily a youth orchestra. I think it sort of speaks to many of the inequities going on, of course, in this country, that a youth orchestra is taking the reins. But this also is a very important breeding ground for excellence in the arts for people of color. And it's not to say, of course, that it is exclusionary, but I think it's very, very important that there are arts organizations that are a majority of people of color, that are, very high level as well. That simply, we're not getting the scraps, but instead there is, effort and importance given on them. It's not a marginalization, but it's a celebration. And I'm really excited for that. It was a program that's supposed to be 2 years normally, but they've extended it for a 3rd year in light of the pandemic. And we're, of course, very grateful for that.
And does that mean you are going to move to Los Angeles?
When the time is right, we shall see.
That's good. So back to the sound of how often and regularly you are presenting your chamber music in different corners of New York City.
It depends on everyone's availability. We have a rotating roster of musicians. And of course, we make every effort to include people from very diverse backgrounds and, of course, of diverse ethnic groups. If you'd like to be a part, simply send me a message. You can find me on Instagram at Jay.Julio. And actually most responsive there, or at our email address, which is soundoff.musicforbail@gmail.com. We do this with some degree of regularity, probably around twice a month. But of course, it very much depends on everyone's availability. We have Saturday programming that happens every Saturday. We've always had an event every Saturday, and those range from master classes with teachers from esteemed music schools, presentations about different techniques on different instruments from other musicians. We have had performances at community mutual aid programs like the Sugar Hill Community Fridge. And we're actually looking forward this Saturday to a performance of Julius Eastman's Feminine at the East River State Park in Brooklyn. You can join us there actually still. We have already had our Zoom rehearsal, but I'm very happy to walk people through the piece. We'll be putting it together for the first time, essentially sight read, at the East River State Park. So we're very excited. We don't know how it's going to go, but we are very optimistic. As this is a seminal minimalist piece and also a indeterminate piece, we're thinking that it'll lend itself very well to a pop-up concert like this. So we're doing that in combination with the Black Box Ensemble, which I'm also the violist of. You can find more info at Black Box Ensemble's Instagram and their Facebook page, or at our Facebook page.
So what do you see yourself? You're very young still. What do you see yourself in 5 years? What's the ideal situation for you professionally?
Everything is changing so much. I feel like if I say what I want to do in 5 years, 5 years from now, I'll be a little embarrassed about that. If you'd asked me a couple years ago, of course, I would probably say with a stable job with an orchestra or in a chamber group. And of course, I love teaching. So of course, teaching will hopefully be in the 5-year plan. In what ways, I can't say. I'm so excited by what technology has given us and what the opening of new doors in our industry and in other industries has led to us. I am very grateful for all the consciousness raising combined with classical music that has been done with organizations like Oberlin in their musicological talks, by Protestra, which combines protests with classical music and other things. But I would be disappointed with myself, I should say, if I wasn't involved in doing this work on a daily basis. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Do you have a question for me?
Oh, wow. You've turned the tables. I guess I should say, oh, this is a hard one. There's so many questions actually that I could ask you. I guess I'll flip the question around and say, what are you looking forward to profiling over the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think I am interested in picking people's brain, whether they're artists or politicians or entrepreneurs. I think in the next couple of weeks is important for me. I would like to portray more people who are contributing to the political importance right now, which I am very much would like to have Biden to win. Although I am not a fuzzy, warm supporter of Biden or ever, but I want him to win just because I want that orange clown to leave.
Yes, and truly, what can be done? We have no alternative. We have no realistic alternative. I'm very grateful that in New York, and in other many solidly blue states, one can conceivably vote their conscience. But I think it's paramount that we have a place to organize in this country. We literally see the nature fighting us over the past year, over the past 10 years, over the past 20 years. We have seen what pollution, what climate change has done, not only to this country, but to the world as an ecosystem. And of course, we need to have land to stand on, that is not polluted. If we intend to have any semblance of a civilization. So that's my take on that. We need whoever will allow us to create changes physically, because we are, of course, in a life and death situation over the next 5 or 10 years in terms of climate change. Scientists have been talking about this for years. We have such limited time left to make a difference.
Right. That's another huge topic of the climate change. So so do you ask me what next few weeks? I probably should be. I am actually, focusing on hopefully finishing my documentary of Young Inspiration.
Yay! Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah. So, but I like to talk to people and being inspired by people who are, or in many fields in their own rights and their specialty to do very well, and then in the same time contribute to society and contribute to the current issue, right? I respect. That's why I wanted to talk to you, because I really respect what you're doing, and you're so young, and yet your position. Because do you notice in our field, I have to say, not very many, musicians are very politically alert or being actively contributing. One person actually is doing a lot of saying things is actually this country music fiddlist, Connor. What's his first name? The violinist. It escaped to me the first letter. But anyway, do you know what I'm talking about? He's very, very famous.
Mark O'Connor?
Yes, Michael O'Connor. Yeah.
Mark O'Connor.
Yeah, he's actually he actually made a lot of a statement on his Facebook about the current situation. So I respect that. I
have not seen that myself.
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah. Go check on him. Go check on him. Yeah,
I'll do that. I'll pencil that in.
Yeah, he writes long, big articles about his political stance, which is very interesting. Yeah, but yes. I don't see a lot of musicians do that. I think some people are afraid of their musical career will be jeopardized by speaking out too much about what they stand for.
Because that does happen, unfortunately. Yeah. People are quick to remove the platforms, especially because our field, especially in the United States, is built on a lot of different kinds of money, and it is unfortunate. Ooh, you can't. I'm worried we're gonna get sad. Exactly. We'll have whoever installed our scholarships be sent to our doors. Oh, geez. I dearly hope not.
Yeah. But anyway, so great. Yeah, it's really wonderful to speak with you and to finally meet you in person, other than seeing you.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So keep up the really great work.
Thank you, and of course you as well. This has been so amazing, and I really admire this. I think it's so important, especially as we see the fall of good media in this country. It's very important that we have independent news and independent, looks at what people are doing. It's important that everyone gets a fair shake to talk about this. Thank you so much. Thank you, truly.
You're very welcome. So, we're gonna end this very quickly, and so keep me posted on your activity, and I guess tonight there's people in Times Square.
Yes, I hope to see many people.
Yay!
Tonight. Hopefully we'll be marching for justice, and hopefully we will not see the wrath of what the NYPD can do as we try and stand for justice. Simply.
Do we have a firm time for tonight at Times Square?
This is 7:00.
7. Okay.
You
Thank
can
you.
see that on the Justice for George Instagram page, I believe. Many
Oh.
people are already following that.
Oh,
But,
yeah. Just as, yeah. So, do you have any announcement to make your future events or your Instagram or your whatever Twitter or you whatever?
We actually do have one event online that anybody can take part of, which I'm very excited about. Next week, after this Saturday, we will be having an open mic and read-in with Sound Off. I haven't posted it on the event page yet, so you guys are the first to know. You can sign up, simply DM the page. We'll have a Google form out pretty soon. And anybody is welcome to share a few minutes of whatever they would like, whether it be a movie that they've shot, or whether it be art that they've made, whether it be just poetry or music, piece they've been working on or writing. And we'll also be going over some of Critical Resistance's texts that sort of outline exactly why we're doing this. So we both spread joy and create a community and understand why we're unifying together.
That's wonderful. So people should check you. How do people find you? Do they find you on